On today's show, are people starting to turn on Luka Doncic? And what could we take away from the Celtics championship run if they win game 4 on Friday night? Plus, we've got the latest on the Lakers coaching search and the celebrations that need to retire. All of that and more on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Friday. Wes Goldberg here with Adam Mares. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Game 4 of the NBA Finals is tonight. The Celtics lead the Mavs 3-0. No team has ever come back from down 3-0 in the finals, and it feels like the Celtics are the far superior team so far. But to me, the storyline going into Friday night, Luka Doncic is getting dragged because of his defense, especially in Game 3, and then his complaining to the officials, especially as he fouled out in his first ever game, fouls out of Game 3 of the NBA Finals. It feels like now, Adam, that the star cynicism has finally come for Luka. What do you think?
I think first of all, I think it's been there for a while. The higher you rise, the more intense the scrutiny, the farther the fall. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Look, he was unbelievable in the last round of the conference finals. There were a lot of people ready to proclaim him the best player in the world. And even good analysts predicted that this series would be significantly more competitive. And when you hear them talk, it was Boston's by far the better team, but Luka alone will close that gap. And, he has been targeted defensively. It's a tough matchup for him, as you mentioned. He hasn't been good on defense. But I think what it really comes down to, Wes, is you can suffer – when we analyze sports, you could suffer a lot of shortcomings from players, weaknesses in their game, what have you. One of the ones that's hardest to overcome is when a player does something that is perceived as selfish, that hurts their team. And in the clutch of last night's game, there was twice when he hit the ground trying to draw a foul and then would look over at the official rather than get back, and it cost points at a key point of a key game. And he's been known for that. But there is a question of if you're willing to do that in a must-win game in the finals at the highest level, if you're willing to do it then that shows a real flaw that's hard to forgive. And I just think that those are the types of things right now that he's under the microscope for. And that's what happens when you reach this level.
You're right. And I can give even the defensive stuff a little bit of a pass, considering that the guy's getting shots injected to his body for pain that apparently starts at the torso and goes through the rest of his body. Like, you're only going to be able to provide so much on the defensive end, especially when he's been asked to do so much on the offensive end, as he always is, and especially in this series where you got one good Kyrie Irving game and no other good games from any of your other teammates. So I can let a few lapses on defense pass. I agree with everything you said, and I would just only add to it. If you're not even a fan of the Mavericks, but just a fan of the NBA watching these finals, it's cringy watching this guy complain to the refs all the time when all these things are happening, when he is giving up those things defensively, when he is trying to draw the fouls. Nobody wants to watch basketball like this. Nobody wants to watch this guy turn I think players always will say, the officials tried to get to be a part of the game. They inserted themselves into the game. Well, if you're complaining to the ref every way down the floor, you're bringing them into the game. And right. Fans don't want that. And so I think that's part of it too, is just aesthetically to watch this. It's cringy, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Cringy, but also it's weakness. More than anything else, it looks like weakness. And we just saw Luka look like he had no weaknesses in the last round. And we've seen him look like that for a lot of his career. That's how talented he is. I'm not making fun of people who thought that he was the best player or still think that he's the best player in the world. But when you get to this level and the margins become so razor thin, some of his shortcomings have become part of the margins in this series. And again, look, I tip my hat to Boston. I think they deserve to be up 3-0. I think they deserve to be at 79 wins and only 20 losses. One of the best, most dominant seasons we've ever seen. If they close this thing out, they deserve all of that. But some of the margins in the series are Luka Doncic's shortcomings. They're targeting him and able to put him in space in a way that makes him vulnerable. They're guarding him better one-on-one than most teams are able to do. And as a result, it's taken away the lobs, taken away the corner. So a lot of this is just that, he's looked weaker than we've seen him on a stage this bright. And some of it is, yes, circumstantial, the injury, but some of it is like, yeah, but we've seen this from Luka on smaller stages. And now that it's kind of hurting him on a big stage, it means a little bit more.
So what happens next? Because obviously the Celtics have a chance to close this thing out and sweep an NBA Finals series. That would be a real tough thing for Luka to have on the resume, right? Is you got swept in the finals, you didn't even win one game. I think Dallas is going to come out with a lot of urgency, and Luka specifically has to.
Yeah.
And I know materially it doesn't matter, Adam. Like, I get it. But to lose in 5 games, to at least win a finals game, would be so much better than being able to, for haters for the rest of his career to be like, well, you got swept in the finals. That's a tough thing.
Any sweeps are tough. I will say historically, we don't remember them. I mean, one thing that always surprises me is Shaq was swept many times. We call him the most dominant player of all time. And I'm not trying to make fun of the label necessarily. I'm just saying it's one of those things that if you ask the average person, Shaq, the most dominant player of all time, was he ever swept? They'd say no. Well, he was swept by some of the other big-time centers in the NBA at his time, like head-to-head. Now, he didn't have as strong as teams or what have you. So I'm with you. I think it's a short-term narrative if you get swept. I do think over time, people will probably not remember it the way that we're talking about.
If he wins one, he's got to win at least one.
It washes it away.
Yeah, and it washes it away. It's a little bit what's happening right now. Reminds me a little bit of 2011 LeBron with Miami when they lost to the Mavericks, and LeBron has this incredible playoff series and then just shrinks on the biggest stage in the NBA Finals. And then you just have questions. Everybody's like, yeah, no problem. Like, this guy made the big decision and all that stuff, but everybody agreed that he was the best player in the league. I'm not saying that we're there with Luka, but like you said, we were having that conversation about him. Is he the best player in the league at least? And this finals put a lot of that stuff, a lot of his shortcomings, like you said, on display. Defensively, it's not good. The complaining to the refs is not a good look. And I think when the Mavericks lose this series, most likely, it's not going to be Luka's fault, but when you're the star, it's put on your doorstep, And so I don't know what you do with that.
Well, with team sports, people discount the aspects that are not like physical. Leadership, for example, inspiration. How good of a teammate were you, and this and that. And I don't even just mean like nice teammate. I mean one that made a positive contribution to the culture of an organization. And I'm not saying Luka is bad at that, but like LeBron, I do think that there are aspects of that portion of it that are starting to come to light, because the higher you go, the more those things get exposed a little bit about a player. And but I do like that you brought up the LeBron 2011 point, because Wes, doesn't that seem like forever ago?
Yes.
And even with LeBron, because I remember, I lived all through this. I was an adult in 2011. I'm 40 now, so you can do the math then. I think I'm in my mid-20s at the time in 2011. And I'm watching this, and I remember at the time just feeling like LeBron was on the downside of his overall arc. Like, it's 2011. We're already, halfway through his career, and he doesn't have a title. And then you go on and you're like, oh, my God, there was almost 2 decades after that of him playing and different teams. And I think the same is true of Luka. Right now feels like he's been in the league a long time, and this feels like a major chapter. And it probably is. And to be honest with you, it's mostly a positive chapter. This has been a great year for the Mavs and for him. But it is one of those things where we might feel silly 8 years from now if we make any proclamations that are too strong, because 8 years is a long time, and it'll make up a majority of his prime.
We can even just look at his opponent. We were just saying this about the Boston Celtics, that they don't got that dog in them, that they don't know how to come up on the biggest stage, that they have all the talent in the world, and yet here they are on the brink, 1 win away from winning the championship, and and it's going to erase that entire narrative. Once they do it, all your failures become part of the journey. It's the Michael Jordan thing, right? You run into a wall, you run into a wall, you run into a wall, and people think that you don't have what it takes to win a championship, but then once you win that championship, all those past failures become part of the journey. And it's like, no, the guy just kept running into a wall, and then he finally hurdled over it. It becomes a story of perseverance rather than failure. And that could be what Luka ends up doing. You're absolutely right. It's very early in his career, but it is just, to me, interesting how the narrative around him is changing, and it's going to change. And we've sort of entered that part of his star career. And like you said at the top, almost every star goes through this at some point.
And by the way, the Boston Celtics, because they have had good teams and gone far in the playoffs in the past and come up short, this year they win 64 games and not everybody's picking them. They're not that overwhelming favorites. Did they play anybody? All those narratives. But then you win and everything flips. Like next year, like I'm telling Celtics fans right now, because every fan base loves to be nobody believed in us. Nobody believed us. The Celtics are a rare example of a 64-win team that nobody actually did believe in them, and they've dominated as much as a 64-win team should. But I'll tell you, just watch next year. You go on a 3-4 game losing streak, and everyone's going to say, Boston's the only good team in the NBA. Like, it's just the way it works. You win, and all of a sudden it flips so hard to the other direction that you'll get credit for things that you did the previous season. I say that as a Denver fan who everybody said, Denver's going to win it this year just because we saw it last year.
Well, let's talk about the Celtics. Why didn't they get as much credit as maybe they deserved during this playoff run? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. The finals means more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. And when the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just getting started with young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside the greats like Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. So go ahead, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. The best way to support us is to subscribe on YouTube, like the video on YouTube, hit that subscribe button if you're listening on your podcast app. All right, before we talk about the latest on the Lakers head coaching search, you mentioned something before about how the Celtics don't really get enough credit, and I was right there, man. I was like, I need to see it. I need to see it. And for the record, I have seen it. For these 3 games, I've seen it. But I needed to see it. Why do you think that was? Why do you think the East was just so strange this year? And why do you think we weren't giving them as much credit as maybe they thought they deserved?
Well, I hit on it early. And while there are new major pieces on this roster, Porzingis, Drew Holiday, to a certain extent, Derek White, this is a team that had the same core of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown that we've seen several years. And I think most people, rightfully in many cases, judge a team based on their best 2 players. Like, okay, it's 2 players and then there's a supporting cast, but they don't matter as much. And I think there's a level of, are Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum like a good enough 1-2 punch? And I still think the answer on that one is it's yes, clearly, because they're going to win this title. But what I mean to say is actually a compliment to Boston, which is the best basketball is when the full 5 guys are working together in perfect connectedness and harmony, and on both ends of the floor. Jaylen Brown has been unbelievable. This is the best I've ever seen him play. Jason Tatum has been very good and unbelievable at playing within himself, trusting his teammates, and doing the dirty work that's not always heralded. He's been doing that so well this whole season and this whole playoffs. So to me, I think that they were judged on this model of 2 stars getting it done with all these other guys doing stuff. But the truth is they are a 5-man lineup that is amazing. They play completely harmonious, and I think everybody's realizing it, and now that will be the narrative, and that's how this team will be remembered, rightfully so.
My favorite thing about the Celtics team is they just know exactly who they are, what they want to do, and what they want to accomplish, and they are so doggedly strict about it. Like, they're not going to veer off course. When the 3-point shots aren't going in, they don't care. They're just going to keep taking them. And even in Game 3, there was these portions of, okay, they go 3 for 4 from 3-point range, 2 of 5 from 3-point range, 3 of 6 from 3-point range. But then there's other ones where it's like 0 for 4. They miss 4 straight threes, or 1 for 5. And you see Dallas kind of climb back in it because Boston is missing shots. And then they go on another like 3 for 6 run from 3-point range. And then they kind of just retake the lead there. And that's part of their identity. Defensively, they're going to say, you know what, we're going to let you go one-on-one, and if you make us look like a fool every once in a while, if you take Al Horford off the dribble and cross him up and make him dance, we don't care. And by the way, Al Horford doesn't care either. He's not looking behind him saying, where's the help? Because everybody in the team knows, no, we're living with that stuff because we don't think you're going to do it enough to beat us. And they're not striving for perfection. This is far from a perfect team, and I do believe that. but it's good enough to win the championship. The goal in a season isn't to be perfect. The goal in an NBA season is to win the title. And they know what good enough to win the title is. They're betting on their identity to win 4 games out of 7, to win more of the 7 games than you're going to be able to win. And I think that's phenomenal. And it's actually really refreshing to watch that from a team that just says, nope, this is what we do. And when we do it well, nobody can beat us. And when we don't do it that well, everybody can come after us and hate on us because when we lose a game 2 or something because of 3-point variance. But we're betting that variance is not going to carry over because we're just more talented 1 through 6 than anybody else in the league. And I think that's great. I do want to ask you about this quote from Jason Tatum. He was asked on Thursday afternoon during their media availability what it would mean for the Celtics to finish off one of the greatest seasons ever. And statistically, it certainly is that. We can have that debate maybe some other time. But he said, quote, you guys would probably say we didn't play anybody to get here, so we just got to do it again next year, end quote. What do you think?
I mean, I think he is right about the way that narratives work in the modern NBA, in the modern media landscape, honestly, with how much media there is, just how fans talk. And by the way, I think fans have always talked about this way. It's just been in, barbershops and in the home. It has never been like mass distributed the way that social media and everything else allows for. But what I will say is he's right. People are going to say those things. They said him about the Denver Nuggets last year. They've said him about, everybody. It was, that was in the bubble, LeBron. That one doesn't count.
Right.
Like, this is just the nature of the beast. LeBron James, there are people that will talk about him and was he really as good as he was or what have you. But what I will say is none of that really should matter. I think they're going to win 80 games and before they lose, they're going to go 80-20 in a 100-game sample size in the season. That's unbelievable. And to me, he's right. You got to repeat because repeat champions are looked at different as individual champions.
It's true.
But you got to do that. But at the end of the day, if they won 6 in a row, somebody at the end would say it's the easiest 6 straight champions anybody's ever won.
It reminds me a little bit of those paintings that are just like abstract. It's like a green square against a white canvas. And somebody's like, well, why was that worth $1 million or something? It's like, well, somebody did it. Right? And now it's up there. And it feels like the Celtics, if the East was that easy, if their path was so easy, well, at least they did it. Somebody had to do it, and they did it. And I don't think that their path was particularly difficult. I think they got a lot of good breaks, right? And they stayed relatively healthy, even with the Kristaps Porzingis thing. Like, their injuries were not the same as the other injuries that they were dealing with the teams that they were playing against. But if they repeat, then all that stuff goes away, more likely than not. And also, some championships aren't created equal. Like, people don't look at Kevin Durant's championships the same way because he joined a super team. People don't necessarily look at the Toronto Raptors championship in 2019 because 2 of the Warriors' best 4 players got hurt in the middle of the series. Tough. But at the end of the day, you're the one with the trophy. Your guys are the ones with the ring. You guys are the ones that get to hang your 18th banner, and that's just what it is. So if that's extra motivation for Boston to go out next year and try to run through the East again and make it back to the finals and try to repeat as champions, then good for them. And by the way, for the record, I think they can do it, but I also don't want to sit here and say, like, I think they're very deserving as a champion. Like, they were the best team in the regular season. It's not some sort of fluky run that they had. But also, I'm not going to sit here and say, wow, your path was really hard. Boo-hoo for losing Kristaps Porzingis for the playoffs. Like, I'm not going to do both things,
Your path is what it is. You have to play who's in front of you. The one thing I'll say is there are years where I look at it and I go, man, they won the title. That's all that really matters. But there were 2 or 3 teams I feel were just as good. Yep. I don't feel that about this year. I really don't. I think the Boston Celtics are the best team in the NBA. I don't think it's particularly close. And while they might have had there's a tougher path they could have taken to get to where they got, at the end of the day, I have little doubt that they were the best team. And they checked all the boxes they needed to. Even in the level of being pushed that they were this year in their way to it, they still checked all those boxes. I mean, last night, Wes, they gave up, a 20-2 run in the clutch, like in the fourth quarter. If they were not the team that I am saying they are, they don't win that game. They don't pull it out. But
if they were the team they were last year, they don't win that game. They don't pull it out. And so I guess the biggest demon that they had to vanquish was themselves. Not to sound like a movie theater, like a movie thing, but too theatrical here. But that's true. Like, it is, right? And so they finally overcame their own inner demons. And like I said, they deserve it. I'm with you. They were the best team. It's not some weird. It's not like, and I mean, no, I'm not taking any shots, but it's not as if like the Pacers are in the are up 3-0 in the finals, and we're like, what in the world just happened, right?
Celtics were favorites all year long.
Yeah.
They checked the box all year long. They look impressive, man. And then, like I said, it's the way they've done it. I've kind of fell in love with this team, to be honest with you, through this.
I won't go that far.
Well, I know you won't. I kind of fell in love with them just in that I like the way that they play. I like the way that they seem to be above the things that Jason Tatum's acknowledging here, these narratives and stuff. So they seem to be above it. And that's what it takes to win. It's sometimes unsatisfying, that to give that up, to give the narrative and say, fine, run with your own narrative. It's unsatisfying. But you know what's really satisfying? Having the championship.
You know what else is really satisfying? Having a head coach in place. We'll talk about the Lakers after this. I tried.
Yeah, it worked.
We got there. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Maybe this is what the Lakers need. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has
you know what?
Where's JJ Redick's LinkedIn profile?
Yeah.
We have a code, Lakers. I know you're a family-run business. You can't offer Dan Hurley all that much money. Well, we got a promo code for you to help you use LinkedIn. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does it all while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free, whether you're looking for a new head coach, a new secretary, a new mechanic, whatever you need. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. NBA talk 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. We have it here on YouTube, Spotify, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Before we get to our countdown to send us off to the weekend, let's talk about the latest on the Lakers head coaching job. So after Dan Hurley passes up on the Lakers job, now the report is that they are back looking at JJ Redick. And that if Redick has a strong interview over the weekend, that they're going to go ahead and move forward with him as their top choice. Adam, it really feels like we're going in that direction. I don't know that anybody in the know really thought that Dan Hurley was going to take that Lakers job. That was a whole weird thing. What have you just made of the whole process with the Lakers? They can't just do it normal, can they?
This whole thing has felt like a total sham, is what it feels like, man. It's all ridiculous. The Lakers don't seem to be able to execute anything, properly and cleanly and smoothly and what have you. And look, there were some weird circumstances probably going on. I mean, word on the street, JJ didn't want to necessarily negotiate this while the finals were going on. I kind of salute him for that. Mm-hmm. Even though the nature of the draft and everything coming right after the finals, teams do need to lock up who their captain is, so to speak, and their coach. But to me, I look at this and I just go, I agree with you. I don't buy for a second that Dan Hurley was ever a realistic candidate for the Lakers. I don't buy it at all. He said on Le Batard's show yesterday, by the way, he went on to really say, no, it was real. It was all real, everyone. Don't ever question it. And then they asked him, like, yeah, they offered me the job. The numbers were the same. And they said, did you talk to LeBron James? He's like, no, I did not. The Lakers offered you a job, a long-term job, and didn't ask you to talk to LeBron, like even just have a conversation. Like, none of this seems real to me. So
no.
I don't know. It's probably going to be JJ, and it was going to be JJ all along.
It felt like it was always JJ. I do understand him being like, you know what, I want the NBA Finals, but also like Charles Lee is actually coaching in the Finals, and he took a job with the Charlotte Hornets. So you're broadcasting, dude. You could take a phone call in the middle of this, like.
Well, I will say this. Let me say one thing. Woj's first report about Hurley, I believe, came 30 minutes before Game 1 of the Finals, and as a fan who does not necessarily a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers.
It was the morning of the finals, I think.
The morning of the finals, whatever it is, it became a top story. Like the top billing on the day of the finals was the LA Lakers head coaching search. And I think there's something to JJ trying to be in this quote unquote new media and change the narrative away from some of these things. I could see a world where he's being earnest and saying, let's not steal the headlines of these poor teams with me. And then I'm on the call and like all this stuff. Like I'll take him at his word just because I want to believe that somebody cares about not. I do agree.
I agree with that. And he probably didn't see this Hurley monkey wrench being tossed into the ring by Woj. And he'd be like, what the heck? And it doesn't look good for JJ now, because now JJ is sort of looked at as the second choice, where he looked like the first choice who was playing a little hard to get this entire time. So it wouldn't shock me if JJ was just like, I got a media empire. I got a sweet gig, and you embarrassed me. See ya. I don't want to coach the Lakers anymore. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen here. But if this took a left turn, that would not surprise me even a little bit because it's the Lakers. Now, I don't know who's in charge. I don't think anybody really knows who's in charge of the Lakers. It's the Rambuses that are at the top. You've got the Bus family doing stuff. Rob Pelinka is only sometimes in charge when they let him be, it sounds like, according to some of this reporting. LeBron James certainly has a say, even though he's on a huge leaked sources media tour to say, I have no say in what's going on. If you want to believe that, that's fine. So it just feels like there's a lot of cooks in the Lakers' kitchen. And that's why you end up with these circuses where usually the way most NBA teams operate is you have an owner and you have a general manager, and those people decide who the head coach is going to be. And I don't really know who's in charge with the Lakers right now. And it really does seem like nobody knows who's in charge right now. Because anybody could just call up Dan Hurley and be like, let's have a meeting this Sunday, you know?
What a world we live in. Yeah. A lot of cooks in the kitchen. The food's terrible.
Well done. It's Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend with our weekly power ranking.
I'm a system player. I am a system player.
Go power rankings. Go power rankings.
Adam, it was a big talking point after the game. Luka Doncic complaining to the officials, maybe sprinkling in a money sign, suggesting that maybe the refs are on the payroll. And by the way, if every player on every team is going to start doing the money sign at the refs, then who are the refs getting paid to defend here? Who are the refs getting paid to fix the games for? I guess it's the Celtics because they're not doing the money sign. So that got me thinking. I am sick. There has been. I'm going to say this. I don't know that Basketball Reference or Synergy has a stat for this. I think we broke the record this year for most players throwing the money sign at the officials, and I guarantee you it is going to be a talking point this summer in these players' meetings and stuff like that happen to say, knock it off. It's a bad look for the league. But it got me thinking, what other signs do we need to retire? Because there's a whole lot of things that NBA players do that I think it's a little tired and we got to get rid of them. So we're going to start with number 5. It's the stinky 3 fingers, man. And I feel that this is number 5. I feel bad because I feel like I'm targeting Jalen Brunson and Knicks fans love it, but it's just not good. It's
think
just
how sweaty his hand is.
It's on that basketball where everybody else is touching, and every time he hits a 3, he puts 3 fingers. I'm not even gonna do it. He puts 3 fingers under his nose and scrunches up his nose like something stinks. Like something stinks, and it's nasty, and he doesn't need to do it, and you're better than this, Jalen Brunson. Just hit the 3, get back on defense, buddy. We don't need that.
That's also like, it's not that hygienic. You're all sweaty hand touching everybody else.
I mean, that's why they stink.
And then
they stink. That's why maybe the face is involuntary, and he just keeps doing it and forgetting. He's like, all right, I gotta not do this anymore.
I can't take it.
That was number 5. Number 4, ice in the veins. The only reason this wasn't number 5 was just multiple players do it. Okay, cool. What
Schroeder does it? Like everybody does this one. People that definitely do not have ice in their veins do this one.
So one of my favorite things is, and I'm just going to name a player, Draymond Green, for instance. When he's a very bad 3-point shooter for his entire career, and teams just leave him open, and he misses like 3 in a row, and then he finally hits one. So he's 1 for 4. He's 25%, which is about his career average. And then he looks at the bench and says, "You can't leave me open." It's like, no. We were betting that was going to happen. We were going to leave you open 4 times. You're going to hit one of them. We'll live with that result. That's one of my favorite things. Couldn't be retired because it's not necessarily a sign. Ice in the veins, a cousin of that. Let's get rid of it.
It's also like ice in the veins, and like, are you injecting into your veins? Are you tapping them? I don't. It's just,
are you bringing the ice out?
Are you bringing the ice out so you can bleed out some ice? I don't know, man. Come on.
I don't need it. And if there were ice in your veins, it would be really hard to lift your arm. Right?
There you go.
So there. Scientifically, it doesn't even make sense. Number 3, and I can't believe this is not higher. Asking for the review. And I think we need to grade this one based on the quarter. If it's a first quarter ask for review, this is number 1.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Can I tell you something? They nailed the sign, though. This is a total review sign, Sometimes it's like the charge perfect. That's exactly right. review. That's perfect. That's it. That they nailed it.
It looks a little silly when the players and the coaches do it. Like it just like this little finger twirl. Like it looks. It's like,
But it's a little condescending. That's why I like it. Like you call the timeout and you look at the ref and you're like, you know what? Go take another look at that one, buddy.
It is better than just like a randomly colored flag that sticks in your pocket.
Yeah, that's true.
So
And you have to throw onto the court.
yeah, you have to find it. You have to throw it. You know.
You're like, oh crap. Yeah. Review.
Number 2, the paid sign. We gotta get rid of this. Talked about that already. Stop. This is, to me, modern players, not to sound like old guy, but modern players not understanding the history of the league and how damaging that might be to the league, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very disrespectful to the refs. I don't think that that's going to help you. When you give the money sign to the official, 0% chance the next call is going your way, dude.
Right.
0% chance, right?
I just love this idea that we've had the Wolves, Mavs, Nuggets, Pacers all make deep playoff runs, and it's like the league's doing it for money. What?
Right. It's for the ratings. And number 1, and I feel very strongly about this, the too small thing.
Oh, I hate this. I hate that this is your number 1. I love too small. This is
gotta
a short
go.
guy. Wes, is this a short guy take here? Hold on a second.
Who
Is
are you
that
talking
what-
about?
I don't know. I'm just saying. Is this a little too close to home? Too little.
You can't do it after everything. Some guy will hit this. A guy will hit like a finesse floating like that PJ Washington little finesse push shot, like 8 feet away from the basket, and then you hit him with a too small. So
Yeah.
what are you talking about? You faded away on that shot.
This is my favorite thing though, because I have a take. I'm a tall guy. I don't like when all 3 officials are short. I just feel like you have no frame. You need one 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" ref on every crew, so he can go inside the paint, call it on the baseline. Because you always get the little guys out there, man, and they're just calling charges on PJ Tucker's drawing 8 charges a game because the little guys are filling for him.
Well, it's all about foot placement, so they're closer to the floor.
That's right.
It's like, were the feet moving? I don't know. I was only a few feet away from that. I could tell. I could see. The guy with the head in the clouds can't see. I think too small's got to go. It used to be
about this?
awesome.
What about the Kevin Durant 1 inch?
Yeah, all of that. Like, it needs
Really?
to go. No, the Kevin Durant one's not bad because that's more like him. But like when you get random role player doing the too small thing, it's
Pat
played
Bev
out.
does
It
a
used
lot.
it used to be awesome.
The game.
It used to be awesome. Yeah, Patrick Beverley ruined it.
It's like so
You know
many
what?
things.
That's the take here.
There it is. It's a good take.
Retire it. We're done here. It used to be great, then Patrick Beverley ruined it, like so many things. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and your favorite podcast app.